This is the Gambia, a small country in Western Africa that, as you might notice, is just a river, the Gambia River to be exact. The Gambia, the country, follows the river inland for only 295 miles, and it's an extremely narrow country, with its widest point being only 30 miles across. This makes the total land area of the Gambia extremely small. For reference, it's roughly the same size as Qatar in the Middle East, or the US state of Maryland. Another odd thing about the Gambia, besides its small size, is its neighbors, or well, neighbor. The Gambia, except for its coastline, is completely surrounded by the country of Senegal. So why is this small country that's just a river independent and not part of its significantly larger neighbor? Well, to answer that, we need to understand a bit of Gambian history. Our story begins in the early 13th century with Sundiata Keita, ruler of the Mali Empire, who conquered local tribes and incorporated the area around the Gambia River into his empire. The Gambia would stay within the Mali Empire for the next 100 years, until Mali lost control of the region to the Jolof Empire, who also struggled to maintain their hold on the region, and after the Jolof were expelled, control reverted to small local kingdoms. It was around this time the Europeans arrived. The Portuguese, looking for new trade routes, arrived in the Gambia in the 1440s. Led by Captain Nuno Tristão, they signed a treaty of friendship with the people of Cape Verde, which is actually the westernmost point of Africa. The Portuguese then returned with trade ships yearly. Seeking to expand their operations in the region, Portugal sent 2 Italian explorers deeper down the Gambia River. The Italian expedition proved successful, and with a successful repeat the next year that explored even deeper down the Gambia, the Portuguese were ready to colonize, which, surprisingly, failed miserably. So why am I mentioning them? Well, besides being the first Europeans to arrive in the Gambia, the Portuguese also gave the Gambia its name in English. The English word Gambia comes from the Portuguese word cambio, meaning trade. After some troubling events in Portugal, namely the Spanish king seizing the throne, many prominent Portuguese fled to England, some of whom continued trading with the Gambia. The seizure of the Portuguese throne didn't only upset traders, it upset the Portuguese nobility. One Portuguese noble, Antonio, claimed the Portuguese throne, and to raise funds to fight the Spanish, sold trading rights in the Gambia to a group of merchants in London. Yet, like the Portuguese expeditions before, several British attempts to open trade failed, and resulted in large losses of money and human life. After the English gave up on colonizing the Gambia, for the time being at least, an unlikely and honestly quite strange player entered the scene, Jacob Kettler, the Duke of Courland. The Duchy of Courland was a small country in modern-day Latvia that, due to their eccentric ruler, had a small colonial empire, which included the island of Tobago in the Caribbean. In the 1650s, Courland established small colonies at the mouth of the river, but after their king was captured, they could no longer afford to maintain the colony and sold it to the Dutch West India Company. Later, the French forced the Dutch to abandon the colony, and Courland decided to attempt colonization yet again. Courland soon after sold it to the English, who would hurry gold from the area in return for Tobago and trading rights in the Gambia. This multi-ethnic colonization led to several different groups trading in the Gambia, the Courlanders, English, and Dutch merchants. Meanwhile, the English weren't the only ones colonizing West Africa. The French took the nearby island of Gorée. This would start a conflict between England and France in the Gambia for the next 100 years. The French took over English forts in the area several times, but they were unable to occupy the region. In 1713, the French recognized English control over the Gambia. Even after the settlement, the English found it difficult to profitably manage the Gambia, and no longer needing to control the colony to annoy the French, decided to reduce their influence to just trading with the natives. In the early 1800s, the British once again took an interest in colonizing the Gambia. This was mostly done through purchasing land from native kingdoms, such as St. Mary's Island, MacArthur Island, and the Terre of Fatanenda. Later in the 1800s, the French colony in Gorée, known as Senegal, had grown so large it completely encapsulated the British colony in the Gambia. Due to this, France tried to acquire the Gambia from the British several times, but popular opposition from the British Parliament and the inhabitants of the Gambia prevented a deal. After the acquisition failed, the borders between the Gambia and Senegal needed to be determined, which happened in 1889. Like many other British colonies in the 20th century, the Gambia began on a path towards self-rule. In 1901, the Gambia created its first military unit, the Gambia Company, which fought in both world wars. In World War I, the Gambia Company fought in the Cameroon Campaign, in which the British invaded the German colony in the modern Republic of Cameroon. In World War II, the Gambia Company was upgraded to a full regiment with 2 battalions and fought in the Burma Campaign in Southeast Asia. Also during World War II, the Gambia became the first African country to be visited by a U.S. president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was horrified at the poverty he saw there. After the war, the Gambia began moving towards independence. The first election for the Gambian Prime Minister occurred in 1960, but it was tied. Further elections in 1962 led to Dawda Jawara becoming Prime Minister. On the 18th of February, 1965, the Gambia gained its independence from the United Kingdom, albeit with the Queen retaining her ceremonial position as head of state, which she would lose a few years later as a result of a referendum. Now the head of state, Jawara continued to be prime minister until 1981, when a coup was orchestrated by Kukoy Sanyang. Jawara, out of the country at the time, appealed to Senegal for assistance. Senegal, wanting to maintain stability in the region, accepted, and their army swiftly crushed the rebels, ending the coup attempt. After the coup, Jawara, partially seeking to stabilize the country, and partially to repay Senegal for their help, created the Senegambia Confederation, the aim of which was to integrate the military and economy of the two countries. This unification attempt, while good in theory, failed miserably due to the fear of Senegal by the Gambia, as well as irreconcilable economic differences. The Gambia, due to its small size, prioritized free trade, while Senegal, due to its significantly larger economy, prioritized tariffs. These tensions eventually led to the dissolution of the Union in 1989. Very little changed in the Gambia as a result of the Union, owing to its short lifespan. However, as a result of trying to integrate the armed forces of the two countries, the Gambia actually needed a military to integrate, as it previously had not had one. This became quite important in 1994, when a military coup led by Yahya Jammeh overthrew Jawara. The coup was led by junior officers of the Gambian National Army, while a majority of the army was training with the American Marine Corps. After being overthrown, Jawara went to the Americans for assistance, but they refused to intervene. Jammeh would maintain power over the country for the next 20 years, as he continued winning re-election until 2016, when he lost to Adama Barrow. After initially recognizing the result, he soon realized that he in fact quite enjoyed being in charge, and denied the result. This led to Barrow fleeing the country to Senegal, where at the Gambian embassy he was sworn in as president. Seeking to prevent further instability in the region, the Economic Community of West African States staged an intervention and dispatched 8,000 soldiers to force Jammeh to step down, which he did, and immediately after he fled to Equatorial Guinea. 6 days later, Barrow returned to the country and began his term as president. Barrow's presidency has been a return to democracy and freedom for the Gambia, which throughout its nearly 1,000-year history it hasn't had much of. From Dutch to Latvian to British, then to dictatorship, hopefully the country that's literally just a river can catch a break. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, it would really help the channel if you subscribed. Thanks for watching.